Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters of the Week video. As always, this random entry here comes from the cryptids.wikia.com website. Basically, whatever lands there on the random entry feature, I'll talk about here on my channel. In this case, it brings up a rather terrifying creature, something that is actually very frightful, not just how it looks like, but how it acts. In fact, when I was reading this information, the creature that it's based off of in real life is almost pretty scary as is. Now imagine something like this, where it's a cryptid that's a mishmash involving this real life creature and a human, and you have something that is pretty much out of the world of nightmares. This is definitely a very dangerous creature too, one that you don't want to come across at any point whatsoever, and to even add more fear to it, not only does it invade your life in the real life, like let's say out there in the forest, but it can also do so in your dreams and can apparently be just as dangerous then. So in this case, it has to do with this. You're looking at it now. For a frightful creature, it has a pretty unique name. It's known as the Kikiyaon. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating info associated again with this very, very scary looking, scary acting creature. So here's essentially what this is. The Kikiyaon is found there in Africa. I don't know exactly what region or area associated with Africa, but just imagine something like this just encompassing that location. It seems to point more towards the eastern side of the continent, but somebody else there who knows more information about it might want to let us know in the comments exactly what location this creature is found. What is known though is you have to go into the deep foresty type locations, and then that's where those areas frequent with this Kikiyaon. It seems like if you're kind of safe, let's say staying nearby an open village, that's fine. But once you head over to the darkish forest areas, especially when it comes to closer to nighttime, that's essentially when you fall into the realm of this very, very scary creature. Now, as far as its physical characteristics, there's plenty to talk about, so let's share that here. For starters, imagine again like an owl, a real life owl, start that as a basis point, but then add in something involving the mixture of a bird and a human. So if you were to mix in a human along with this owl and maybe some other bird-like features, that's essentially what you come across with this nightmarish creature. Add that to the fact that it's larger than your average owl. It's probably actually even closer to being human-sized, and you can see why this is a creature that would instill so much fear and so much horror whenever that happens. In fact, it seems like the very name itself is not really said out loud there within the African area for fear of conjuring or bringing forward whatever this creature is there. But yes, once you go past the point of it being a large owl, there's this. It has its arms and its feet, which again resemble more than the lines of those of a human, but it has these very, very large wings that come across the backside of it. Very large, very feathered. It uses this to its advantage whenever it's silently gliding across the night, and then obviously when it folds its wings, it's ready to strike downward, much exactly like an owl would as well. Its head can be something along the sides of an owl, but other iterations state that it's more human-like. And even more freakish is the fact that it has that very large beak, whether it's the face of an owl or the face of a human. Again, that would definitely be something that stands out, but that's its beak that also is associated with its face. And then going back to its actual feet, it has these very deadly, very large talons, much like an owl would, and then these talons are attached to a very strong muscular set of feet. So in other words, once it grabs hold of something in terms of its prey, there's pretty much little to no chance that this prey is going to be able to escape its grasp. And then on top of that, it seems to have these, I don't know if you could call those spurs or something else along the lines of bony joints, whatever those are. But there's these spikes that seem to emit from its left and its right side, almost as if it's like its ribs are jutting outward, but they're very, very sharp. In fact, it uses this as a backup weapon in case its talons don't necessarily have any kind of impact on its prey. Whatever it's attacking, it can then use these bony spurs or spike to be able to create much other impact as well, much deadlier impact too. All of this again combines to a ferocious creature, one that is absolutely deadly, a huge apex predator that's there in Africa. The notion goes that, again, as long as you're near a village or somewhere out there in the open and it's during the daytime, you're kind of safe. Like, in other words, you won't have much chance of coming across this mishmash of an owl/human. But if you do have something along the lines of an encounter where for whatever reason you're there in the nighttime, then there's a good, and by a deep dark foresty area, then there's a chance that you could come across this creature. Luckily though, and this is some saving graces of sorts, you do have some warnings that are ahead of time. One of them is this, and these are warnings that'll tell you whether you're in the vicinity of this Kikiyaon. One is the smell associated with this creature. Apparently people that know its land, that know its realm, wherever it habitates, or does anything as far as its quote-unquote home, it resembles that of a dead snake, something that has been out there rotting in the sun for a long time. So if you smell that type of smell out there within the vicinity, then chances are you're nearby the realm associated of the Kikiyaon. That's a good indication, though, to turn the other way, move towards the left, just go somewhere else away from wherever you were heading that happens to have this particular smell. So there's that indication there. Another indication is this. It's the fact that it has these very unique sounds that come out of its mouth. They are very nightmarish in of its own, but they definitely carry a long distance out there in the open sky. And when that happens, that'll tell you some indication essentially of where this creature is. How they sound like is this. Apparently its most frightening sound happens to sound something along the lines of a deep guttural growl. It's something that almost emanates from the back of its throat, almost as if it's, and the way people describe it, like a screaming moan, like if somebody was almost being strangled to death, like a man would be strangled to death, but in a much louder volume. That's essentially how this creature sounds. Another indication is it's more on the lines of, I don't know if it was something like like an owl type of sound makes, but it seems to be more along that lines too. This one though comes across as it being like a natural call associated with it. Like maybe it's communicating with other types of Kikiyaons out there, or maybe it's just showcasing its presence. Whatever that may be, this is another form of a sound that this creature makes. And when that happens, again, you'll know that you're within the vicinity of this particular cryptid. But other than that, if you truly see something out there streaking towards the sky, and it looks like it has almost a short, greenish, grayish hair, larger than your average owl, more human-sized, and for whatever reason it looks something like this, like a mishmash of it being an owl/man, that's essentially what you're coming across when it comes to this Kikiyaon. Pretty frightful stuff again, considering everything that I was just mentioning, the way it looks, the way it sounds, the way it attacks as well. People that live there in those locations state that there's no chance about you being able to outrun it. Once it sees you and it starts tracking you, you better find some safe shelter soon in order to make sure that you don't come across as another victim for it. In fact, its favorite prey seems to be travelers who happen to be, again, walking across point A to point B in the middle of that deep dark forest. It loves ambushing them, and then when that happens, then it just becomes its next meal. But as I teased a little bit earlier, there's the fact that it does all of this in the real world. In other words, out there in the open and in the real forest during the nighttime and so on. There's this other notion that apparently it's almost supernatural. In fact, there was this term as it being ephemeral, if that's another notion tied to it, is this. It can move not only between the real world, but also into the dream world. It apparently invades people's minds as well. And then when that happens, it'll attack them within their dreams. And then it's almost doing the very same thing it would be doing in real life. It would start chasing them. And the idea goes that if it does anything within the dream itself, and even up to death, then that essentially causes the person to die within the dream too. Isn't that pretty evil when you think about it? Here you have this Kikiyaon being able to go into people's dreams. And when that happens, the first thing that it does is it starts attacking them and then seeing what it can do as far as causing great harm, even up to death. And then if it can't do that, obviously people will wake up, let's say at the last moment, right before it happens, and they wake up from that nightmare, then clearly it's done at least some of its job in terms of making people just scared out of their mind as to what they were dreaming and not realizing that they really had a Kikiyaon actually within their dreams trying to truly attack them, especially when people can't remember what happens afterwards in their dreams. But that's really, really scary. That gives you an idea that this is something that is a whole other level, maybe even supernatural, but that remains to be seen as to how far that particular side is, how much of it is truly out there in the real world compared to what it does essentially in the dream world too. One last thing to mention as well, apparently if it's trying to attack you in the real world, but it doesn't do that, it doesn't catch you, it doesn't have any success when it comes to that. Apparently, people still experience bad luck afterwards from some form of lingering illness that follows them because of what happened to them afterwards. So maybe it's almost like a form of a curse. And if that's true, that's just yet again another indication of just how deadly this creature is and how much malice it has, how truly evil, in other words, it has, because it can attack on so many fronts. But that's pretty much it. That's all the information associated with this very unique but absolutely just evil creature there associated from Africa, the Kikiyaon. If anybody has any more info, anything else I might have missed, then please post those comments below. What about those of you in the local area there in Africa? Maybe you might know, again, the exact area, location where this thing is at. If so, please post it in the comments. But if you have any more local tales, as always, that'd be great to hear from you as well. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.